Okay.
Okay, good morning, everybody. The first order of business is that you had essays due today. Really? Yes. You were here about who you most admired, the leader you most admired. Claire gave it to you yesterday. Exactly. That's right. So we're going to be expecting those at the end of the day. You all are going to talk a little bit about those today with Dr. Clarke. As you can see, we have someone here with us. This is Dr. Henrik Clarke. He's someone who I've learned about all my life. He basically started my father off on what he does today. He has a perspective about Black history and so much knowledge in his head that you wouldn't believe it. If you just sit at his feet and listen, the things that this man says are just, you wouldn't believe it. He's going to talk a little today about role models and leaders. Now, what's the problem? Everybody's laughing at the camera? Okay, yes, we're on the camera. Everybody get it all out. Let's all laugh right now. Okay, good. Everybody got it out? No. This is their first time on camera, so they're very excited about this. They're seeing themselves on the TV here, so they're very excited.
This is old stuff to me.
He said this is old stuff to him. Okay, everybody got it out? So everybody can pay attention now? Okay, so I'm going to put you into the hands of our guest today, who is Professor Henrik Clarke. And we'll expect that everybody will go by all the rules that we usually follow here. Okay? Okay.
I want to speak for about a half hour. Then I want to give you time, adequate time, to ask any question you want to ask. You can ask questions about the essays you're writing, about information about the leader you have chosen as models, and you can ask information about models itself and about images itself, because the world is controlled to a great extent by images. If people would do for themselves to the extent of what they know about themselves and to the extent of what they accept about themselves. You are a mixture of a lot of people in the African world and in the Caribbean world that is an extension of the African world. And we have not been accustomed to not only thinking of the Caribbeans as an extension of the African world, but the place where the African had a new and cruel and tragic beginning again away from home. And what he did away from home, especially in Jamaica and in Haiti, what he did away from home rescued the economy of Europe and pulled Europe out of the Middle Ages, the lethargy of the Middle Ages. You think you're not significant. Your significance gets higher and higher as I explain this to you, except for the Caribbean islands. Europe came out of the Middle Ages, people poor, land poor, resource poor, where they made the money to build the ships, even making money on slaves to build new slave ships, was the Caribbean islands. And I'm not just talking about the English-speaking Caribbeans, I'm talking about all of them. We've forgotten the Dutch Caribbeans. We know the Spanish-speaking Caribbeans, but we sometimes do not include it in our consciousness when we say Caribbean. Cuba's a part of the Caribbean. Now, whether you like the government in Cuba or don't like the government in Cuba is not the issue. Cuba is a part of the Caribbean. And when you're talking about the Caribbean, you have to talk about what happened in Cuba too. Because not only a cruel set of slavery started in Cuba, the first organized revolts against slavery also started in Cuba. Now you see Cuba's importance becoming important?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you agree with Castro or not. Cuba becomes important because of the role it has played in sugar, in the transfer of those commodities that made Europe whole and gave Europe the arrogance to dominate most of the world. We use the word arrogance on purpose because no one has the right to dominate another people. And once you learn the art of doing it yourself, you don't let other people do it to you. So your first mastery, your first thing that you have to regain in nationness is command of yourself. And you are not going to gain control of command of yourself until you like yourself. You look in the mirror and say, you're a nice fellow. You like that guy. He's going to go out today and change the world. He can do it too. God looks and says, I'm going to change the world. The child I produce might be the new Jesus Christ. Who knows? Who can tell? Who knows what Mary was going to bring forth? Her chance of producing a new Jesus Christ or a new doctor who can cure the common cold or AIDS, better find a scientist and a researcher who can understand that AIDS was an invention, invented to annihilate the people. All right, now we're going to talk about role models, because a man who never saw a train would have a hard time making a train, because the concept of the train hasn't reached his mind. But a man who's seen a train, there's wheels, there's a whistle there, he said, well, maybe I can make one of those things myself. This is exactly what the Japanese did. They take the role model of a train, they broke it down, pointing to their scientists and their technicians. You make the wheel, you make the whistle, you make the motor, you make this, and you make that. And then when they finally duplicated every piece of it, they put it together. At first, they didn't think it was wrong. When they pushed down on the lever, if it ran for white, it would run for them too. In the same way they made a gun. A gun is neutral. A gun has no opinion. Depends on if your hand can pull it faster, you can outdo white up. You can throw faster. And if he outdo you, it's because he's got more confidence in himself. And if you start practicing, sooner or later, you'll be just as good as he. What am I talking about? I'm talking about when you oppress a people, you have to take away from them the role model of nation. You have to convince them that they never ruled a nation. And even when they become free, they have to think the only way to rule a nation is to model the nation after the people who used to rule me. This is where the Caribbean islands went wrong. This is where Africa went wrong. This is where India is going wrong right now. And this is where China could go wrong if it continues on the present course. If they want to buy a piece of our democracy, then that means they don't understand it, because they don't understand we don't have any. Now, when you choose a human being as a role model to inspire your life and who you want to be, who in Africa are you going to choose? And as much as there's so many thousands of people you're going to choose from, when you look to Africa, what is the role model? Many times a role model must inspire you, and you don't necessarily have to be like the role model, but you must do something comparable or do something to improve yourself and make yourself a better human being. The first personality that emerged in African history was a genius, a multi-genius, Imhotep, built the step pyramid. The first doctor who lived, he was the first doctor, he lived 2,000 years before the Greek was called the first doctor. He started the intellectual gathering of scholars that resulted eventually in the great lodge of Luxor, the first educational institution of higher learning that we know of. Now, I'm not saying you have to be Imhotep. This man was so talented he could do 10 or more things with correctness and left his stamp on the world that he was the forerunner of a deity. For years, people worshiped at the shrine of an Imhotep. What you need to know the possibilities of a commoner becoming advisor to a king and leaving something that changed the world for all times to come. His step pyramid gave man the idea that he can build a house that had more than one story. Because that's all the step pyramid is. He began operation, the science of abdominal medicine, the opening up the human stomach and fixing something inside of it. That you don't have to stand outside of man to fix him. If something goes wrong physically inside of him, you can open him up and fix it. This man began medical operations. Now, you can take his life and say that, well, if he did this in medicine, I'm going to do the same thing in engineering. I'm saying that you don't have to be like the role model, but the role model is supposed to inspire you to be something of significance. And when we look further into African history, go further down, remember now, he's from the 3rd dynasty. The 3rd dynasty is from the 1st to the 6th dynasty. This is the pyramid building dynasty. From the 6th to the 12th was the temple building dynasties. The Hebrew entry into Africa came in the 13th dynasty. My main point is that the greatness of Africa had occurred before they even had visitors, let alone invaders. And they'd already built the pyramid, they'd established religion, and they'd done something man is still arguing about today, that the African had balanced the society to the point where if you had a king, if you had a god, you had to have a goddess. Female equality built into the culture. And that man was a counterpart of women. And that a man without a woman was half of a man. Now, once he joins with woman, he becomes complete. And he did not debate as to whether he was superior to the woman, because man does not debate whether he's superior to his mother. That is no debate for an intelligent man. Mama remains supreme. Which does not mean that you got to go through your life bowing to women. The Africans did not. But the Africans believe in the equal importance of women. And what she did was of equal importance. And he gave the same attention to what she did. Now, Western man, in the three major religions, now we won't discuss that today because it takes too much time. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are all male chauvinist religions, male-oriented. The male is always up front. The woman is behind the scenes doing the work. The woman is the workhorse of all these religions. The man is the glamour boy of all these religions. Now, can you identify the women behind that faker? Because I think most evangelists like Jimmy Swagger are fakers anyway. I choose him because some of you might know what I'm talking about. But the women behind running that church, counting that money, now the men are stealing it. But you don't have to go that far. You just go to your own church. See who's behind the scenes who's keeping that church together? Woman. And do you think those deacons would elect a new pastor without consulting his wife? He'd fly to the moon first. And he won't go home. But my main point is that there are models in all these societies. Now, Africa was invaded soon after the Hebrew entry. People call the hit songs, Shepherd Kings. And once that invasion was overcome, the 17th dynasty, the 18th dynasty, let's talk about the 18th. Because at the top of the 18th, you have a female model that you need to look at. A female head of state, Hatshepsut, out of a family called Thutmose. Her father was ill most of the time. He had spent most of his time fighting to drive the foreigners out. And he willed that she be declared Pharaoh, not queen.
Her name again?
Hatshepsut. Read J.A. Rogers' World's Great Men of Color. You find a short biography of her and a picture of her. Now, after Hatshepsut, she had to push her brother, Thutmose III, because he wanted to come to power when he was only 12 years old, and he didn't know how to handle power. So she shaved his head and sent him to the temple. And for 21 years, she had him trained. When finally he came to power, he was one of the greatest pharaohs ever did. He never forgave her. This might be the first male-female fight. It's always misinterpreted anyway. But it wasn't a male-female fight. It was a fight between two royal people over power. The important thing again about the 18th, that you find about the third of that dynasty, about 1360, you find the emergence of a sickly boy, Amenhotep IV, who will emerge in the world as Akhenaten, didn't want to come to power. And finally, when he came to power, he thought so much of life he would not crush a flower. He outlawed warfare, and the people who were under Egypt could break away if they wanted to. They didn't have to fight. He strengthened the Egypt of that day with alliances other than war. We're talking about Akhenaten. Don't ask me to spell it. Look at J.A. Rogers' World's Great Men of Color, Volume 1. That's him and his picture. I don't know what a Negro is supposed to be, because I don't even believe there's such thing as a Negro. I don't even believe in the word, because there is no such thing where people are concerned. But he had the stereotype features assigned to people they call Negroes. Thick lips, broad nose. He was married to one of the most beautiful women of the world of that day, reported to be Asian. If she's a model at all, she's a model because he gave her equality and room. But the woman you need to look at, if you're looking for a female model, is his mother, the great Queen Tai, wife of Amenhotep III, who didn't agree with his religion, but also didn't agree with his enemies. A lot of people give the Jews credit for introducing monotheism. A lot of people give Imhotep credit and give Akhenaten credit for introducing monotheism. They're wrong. They're wrong both ways. All Akhenaten did was to restore to people what they had already. Monotheism was already there. And all the Jews did was to hear of monotheism and talk about it and tell about it and write about it. And their writing became so well known, people think they introduced it. But Akhenaten is the perfect example of a humanitarian royal person who refused to use war. He was a believer in nonviolence. And if you say he was the forerunner of Martin Luther King, you would be correct, because the antecedents of Martin Luther King is deep in African history and in African thought. Now, there's no one else in this. Thutmose III was a good role model because he restored the state after his sister. He consolidated the forces. He conquered Western Asia. At the end of the dynasty, there's a misunderstood boy, Tutankhamun, called King Tut, who achieved absolutely nothing. So not even good for a role model. The next role model will come from the 19th dynasty. This would be a king who's Ramesses II, whose bloodline ran through the next 5 dynasties. He was a great builder. He restored the concept of building. This is for his dynasty. It's called the Builder's Age. The age when Egypt began to build great temples again. So many statues were made of him. You don't know which one's him and which ones are just similar to him. So there's a lot of statues in Egypt we call the Ramessean statues. Ramesses could have looked like this, but a lot of people who never saw him just put up a statue in his honor. And one statue was so big and so heavy and carved out of stone that was so durable. The statue fell. And it was so heavy nobody been able to lift it yet. And it is still in Egypt, falling down. And if all the people see it, they just built a little museum around it. So you can go on the ledge of the museum and look down on it. The great Tati. The Arabs call him Egypt's greatest egomaniac. Because he puts his name on everything. Africans don't even sign their name. They produce art better than Michelangelo. Never sign their name. Taught names on everything. Not me, Ramesses. He was all over the place. Well, he might have well been an egomaniac, but he left his stamp on a nation in such a way that he got across the idea that you can pick a fallen nation up after they have been invaded. And while the 18th dynasty consolidated Egypt again, Nile Valley civilization, it was the 19th that started them back on the road to building. All right, I'll choose just a few more, then we're going to go to the Caribbean and the United States. We're going to stop and let you talk, because I'm more anxious for you to talk and for you to question, and you to feel no hesitation about it. A teacher that produces fear in his student is not much of a teacher. The main thing, I want you to be bold and uninhibited and realize there's nothing about me you need ever to fear, because a teacher is nothing but a servant. And a servant is supposed to be, you can address a servant with respect, and a servant can serve with respect without either one of you losing regard for the other. All right, now, after the 24th dynasty, Egypt was weak, and 3 role models came out of the 25th dynasty: Castor, Pianki, Tahaka. They went up and conquered Egypt and showed their cousins how to rule the nation one more time. And after that, Egypt's 3,000-year walk in the sun was over. The next 7 dynasties were mixed with bastard dynasties, mixed foreigners, and etc. This brings us down to the period of Cleopatra, who came out of one of the mixed dynasties. Okay, now we've held Africa before Christ. But the preface to the period of Christ was the Greek invasion that set up North Africa for the Roman invasion, Roman taxation that made a whole lot of people question old laws and turn to new laws and new gods and turn to their folklore. And out of their folklore, they began to create an image of expectation that led to Christianity. They had been told about a coming Savior for years. They said, well, now with the Romans taxing them and being treated, well, maybe he'll come now. And when someone came that even resembled that, they declared, well, that's the one. Now, don't think I am godless or disrespectful when I say that all gods are man-made. They're not less gods because they are man-made. Because if a circumstance didn't present itself, they couldn't be man-made. And man brought into being new gods and religions to accommodate different things at different times. The Romans killed Christians for a number of years and finally joined the Christians, became Christians, and messed up the religion to such an extent that a camel boy, who's another role model you need to look at, a common camel boy who couldn't read. Remember, the Prophet Muhammad could not read and write. Most of the gods of the world could not read and write. A common camel boy who couldn't read called for reform. Failing to get reform, he called for a new religion. And that new religion was Islam. My main point here is to let you know everybody in this room right now, everybody, and I don't think there's a single exception, every one of you got more education than the Prophet Muhammad started with. And all he had is what you still got. 2 hands, 2 eyes, a brain, about the same way. My main point in emphasizing this is that who told you that you too can't change the world? That you can't make the world better by beginning to make yourself better? Who told you that you can't make yourself into a role model? You can take a role model and create a role model. All right, now, Islam created a lot of black role models, North Africa, the conqueror of Spain, and African. People who took Islam down into West Africa. People who built 3 great independent states in Africa that lasted 1,000 years. Africa, good role models, each ruler. I'm saying there's so many role models in so many different places that you'd be hard pressed to favor one place over the other. In addition to J.A. Rogers' World's Great Men of Color, Volume 1 and 2, there's a book called Great Negroes, Past and Present by Russell Adams that will also give you a lot of role models in the sciences. In the 14th and the 15th century, Europe began to come out of the lethargy of the Middle Ages and created the slave trade that gave her the economic mainstay to become the leader of the world and to expand throughout the world. But this greatest expansion was the Caribbeans. We have not studied the Caribbeans as well as we need to because there's so many role models from the Caribbeans. And the ironic thing, the paradoxical thing is that nearly every great man of consequence in the Caribbean have to leave the Caribbean in order to get a hearing. These islands have a way of producing men whose talent is so expansive. They got to leave home to find the kind of stage that fits their talent. Nearly every great Caribbean thinker had to get out of the Caribbean to get a hearing. Edmund Blyden left the Caribbean, the Virgin Islands, went to Sierra Leone, to Liberia, found a college, was the greatest black thinker of the 19th century. Good role model, educator, world traveler. I'm starting early now. Prince Hall left Barbados, came to the United States, found the Black Masons, he called the African Lodge. Another Caribbean figure, Russ Wam, edited Freedom's Journal. Another one, Robert Campbell, went out to search for the settlement place in Africa with Martin Delaney. The Caribbean people not only played a major role in our civil rights struggle, they played a major role in the struggle in the Caribbean, setting slave revolts in motion, because the most successful, the most extensive slave revolts were in the Caribbean. And just some of their leaders, Kofi, Kojo, led the Maroon Revolt in Jamaica. People written so much about the Maroon Revolt in Jamaica, you think that there were not Maroons throughout the whole New World, including the United States. But the one in Jamaica is so well known, we think that the Jamaican Maroons was the heart and soul of the Maroons. They got attention. But Kofi, who led a revolt in Guyana when it was under the Dutch, called the Babis Revolt. This revolt was before the American Revolution. Africans who led the revolt in Brazil, Palmares, created an anti-African state away from home, lasted 110 years. Another state, Bahia, a black state, still a black state, mostly white rule, but still a black state. That didn't last 110 years, but it lasted quite a while. I mean, black people were in revolt throughout the whole world. We used to say, why did we let this happen to us? We didn't. We stood up and we opposed it in many ways. In the Caribbean Islands and in South America, we produced role model after role model. The extended revolts were in Jamaica. The revolts in Jamaica was more extensive than those in Haiti. But the revolts in Haiti came over a 20-year period. The revolts in Jamaica came over a 100-year period, and they were destabilized in between revolts. So each time revolt was over, you had to mount the revolt and the incentive all over again. The circumstance of history, Jamaica did not become independent. But Jamaica had the same kind of problem that Haiti had, that Jamaica still got, the mulatto problem. Things were hush-hushed about. We're going to have to talk about it honestly and resolve it. And one thing, the people among us who are neither black nor white ain't got no place to go because whites have not agreed to accept them. The white man never makes room in his space in the world for his offsprings by non-white women. It's not my trait, that's his trait. And it's consistent. Now, if one day we get honest about this whole case of rape and teenage pregnancy, we're going to transfer the onus of guilt where it belongs, because he started it. Now, this is no excuse for what we do or fail to do, but as a matter of historical fact, he started it. I'm saying that you can choose role models from the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, Arthur Schomburg, who referred to himself as a Puerto Rican of African descent, and many others from Cuba, several outstanding Cubans of African descent. From the French-speaking Caribbeans, several outstanding militarists, including some fine politicians, Gratian Brandeis, who was chairman of the budget for the French Navy, Gaston Mondeville, who was vice president of France under 3 different administrations, and he's still alive and about 99. So there's no place in the world where we've been that you can't choose role models. Go to Asia, go way over in Asia, to India, you can choose role models over there. The river Ganges was named after an African general. There was another African general who was governor of Bengal. Part of this is in a book called The African Presence in Asia, and another of it is in another book, more recent book called The Africans in Early Asia. In this country, most of the role models you know about, the women role models were mostly pioneers in education. The 3 B's, we call them. Bethune, who built Bethune-Cookman College. Charlotte Hawkins Brown, who built Palmer Institute in the Carolinas. Nanny Burroughs, who built Cheney. There were other black women in education, other outstanding black women who did a whole lot of things other than educate. Ida B. Wells, a great black woman journalist who investigated lynchings, driven out of the South. Mary Church Terrell, who started the whole concept of picketing and sitting down in Washington, D.C., and she was a rich black woman. She really did not have to do it, because she's not only rich, she was light-skinned, rich, and light-skinned is premium in Washington. So she could just been a socialite. Instead of being a socialite, she was out leading the picket line. We tell you something about responsibility is not on any one basis, because all of us have shown some responsibility in liberation. You look at men, David Walker, who started his famous appeal. Look at the 3 leaders of massive slave revolts: Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner. The aftermath of the Civil War, leaders like Frederick Douglass coming and going, leaving behind a whole literature. Booker T. Washington in education, W.E.B. Du Bois extending education a little further, making way for the eventual emergence of men like Martin Luther King. Now I'm going to end right here because I want you to have some kind of a dialogue. And thank you very much. someone will field the questions for me, because in the glare, I may not see the hands. So you speak up and don't think that you got a silly question. Anything you honestly want to know, I respect.
Garfield?
I'm just an American.
Can you hear me?
He says he's Latin American.
No, no.
All right.
Speak up, Garfield. Come on.
Say what country you're from. I said I'm Jamaican. I'm from the United States for 2 weeks. But I noticed that the United States is calling for a black president. Has this taken place in any other nations with the same economy as the United States? And what would be the impact?
What would be the import of
The impact
of
quality history.
well, calling for a black president and getting a black president, two different things. I'm glad that Jesse Jackson went out there and ran, because he proved to young people the possibility. You have a right to do it. You have a right to take these chances. And he was just as qualified as the others, and more so than some. And he has established the fact that it's not just whites alone with this qualification. I think there's a lot of things we can do politically in this country, short of being president, that will give us some power. We can pay more attention to local politics, pay more attention to state politics, pay more attention to who goes into the cabinet, pay more attention to decision-making posts, pay a great deal of attention to education and who's in charge and who's writing the curriculums. There's a whole lot that we can do. And if you're from Jamaica, you have to understand that you came from a strange country and you came into a strange country. That is an enigma and a paradox. Jamaica is the largest country in the Caribbean, and it should be the political leader of the Caribbean. It has not become the political leader of the Caribbean because it has not been able to settle different problems and conflicts with itself. America is the richest nation in the world from the point of view of cultural input. Most of the cultures of the different people in the world meets here. Part of Africa, large part of Africa, large part of Asia, Europe. The country was made with leftovers and failures. And those in Africa who didn't run fast enough and got caught, they got shipped over here. So everybody failed one way or the other. The fact that you can make any kind of a country from all those losers is an achievement. But America has not built on this achievement to the extent that they have to stop thinking that this is a white, male, Anglo-Saxon country and really believe it is a culturally, ethnically mixed country. And let's draw on all of these cultures and draw the strength that will make this nation exceptional among the nations of the world. It has missed its opportunity. It missed its opportunity as shamefully and as needlessly as Jamaica missed its opportunity to be the headquarters and the leaders of the Caribbean Federation.
Can you say what the weakness of the Jamaicans why the British were able to take them to Ghana to fight against the Africans?
No, what he's talking about now is the West Indian Regiment that went to Ghana in 1900 to fight against the Africans, and fight against an African woman, the last great war in Africa led by a woman, Ye Asantewaa. And they came into this war, and there was a Sergeant Gordon who saw the situation for what it was and tried to halt the attack. He eventually was sent back to Jamaica, put in prison where he died. But an Englishman ordered open fire, and they shot down her emissaries coming with their peace offerings. And this brought up a case of bitterness again between Africans and Africans from the West, and Africa can't distinguish one from the other. If you came from the West, sometimes they condemn you. Whether you came from, they don't know whether you came from Jamaica, Trinidad, or Georgia, you know. But the Englishman has been very good at brainwashing. Why would you celebrate Queen's Day and all these British holidays and Empire Day, and you haven't celebrated the day when Kojo took the Maroons to the hills and refused to come under British rule? Haven't celebrated Mansong, another Jamaican rebel, or Taki, another Jamaican rebel. In fact, a lot of the rebels who went to Haiti came originally from Jamaica. Jamaica was the incubator for Caribbean revolts. It culminated in Haiti, but a lot of the revolts started in Jamaica, because the British have not told us through their textbook who we were, and we argue that. Many times when we see a black American using one style of custom, we usually say the black American is not of our culture. If you're not talking about African culture, then neither one of you are talking about anything. You're talking about the British custom as against the American custom. We both are prisoners to that culture. But there's a whole lot of people don't even know about the existence of the famous West Indian regiment that was actually went to the colonies and fought against other African people and other non-European people. What you don't know about history hurt you. If anybody says what you don't know don't hurt you, you should hurt him, because that's exactly what hurts you. What you don't know. Sometimes you're dealing with a fool, and if you knew you were dealing with a fool, you walk away and not stop wasting your time.
Any other questions? Who said that? Laura, go ahead. And then you, John. Now you got to talk so we can't hear you. I can't even hear you. Come on.
What was the history like?
What was the what?
Your history.
What, my history? I was a poor sharecropper boy from the backwoods of Alabama, miserably poor. And the farm, a storm blew the roof off of our house, and our father decided to bring the children to the city where he would work in brickyards and fertilizer factories to make enough money to go back and buy the land. He never bought the land, and the only free land he ever knew was, thanks to a 10 cents a week policy, was the grave we buried him in. It was all paid for. I grew up in Columbus, Georgia, near the big army post. Fort Benning, I used to be a caddy, carrying golf bags around, shiny shoes, making a living as best I could. I used to caddy for a major named Eisenhower. I thought he was a rather dull, mediocre human being. I still think he died mediocre. There was another major called Bradley, who later became John Omar Bradley. Mm-hmm. We always thought he was a senior officer because he tipped a quarter. Eisenhower tipped 15 cents. Seniority depends on how well you tip. That's the way the caddies looked at the customers. I came from a large family, and I was the one who chose to go to city school. That's a big thing in growing up. You live in the county, only one child of the family can go to city school without paying extra tax. I was the one that chose to go to city school, so I had to wear a little better clothes than the rest of them. And some of my brothers and sisters don't forgive me for that to this day. Yeah, he's the one that went to city school. And I learned very well, learned easily. I went to the lower 7th grade in school, and for economic reasons had to drop out. Eventually came to New York and went to night high school for a little while, had to drop out. Joined the Old Harlem History Club, studied under independent black teachers, gave myself the equivalent of a high school education and a college education. Went to college with a college equivalency. NYU, I became critical of the way they were teaching white history. Didn't expect them to teach black history at all. Got thrown out of NYU. Went to New York, New School for Social Research, and instead of going to class and learn history, they gave me a class and let me teach history. And I've trained 2 generations of people how to think better of themselves through an understanding of history. And I've traveled over large areas of the world, mostly all of Africa, parts of Europe, South America, the Caribbean islands, all of the Caribbean islands of consequence, the big ones, some of the small ones. And I've lived on this earth over 70 years. Besides 3 children, had 2 different wives. Between writing and editing, I've authored 25 books, not including pamphlets and conference papers. Though most of my site is gone, I have finished 3 books since being declared legally blind. So that means you don't have to give up. If one facility leaves you, you just try for another one. When you come to nations, you have to remember most of the nations people by most of the people in this room, the Caribbean nations, African nations, Latin American nations. Most of those nations have 10 times more than the Japanese started with. They can start with so little and go so far. What excuse do you have? They studied hard and they worked hard. They didn't boast about it, they did it solid. They're still not very boastful people. They go systematically about that way, doing what they have to do. They never say I'm going to hit you. If they plan to hit you, you know it after you hit you. Sorry?
Do you think there will be a black president of the United States?
It is a request that I think be a black president of the United States.
And when?
I'm saying that a black president of the United States is not absolutely essential to black people getting all the things that do them in the United States. And while others might place this at the top of their priority list, it is not at the top of my priority list. Top of my priority list is to let African people know that they're just one segment of African people. That throughout the world, when you communicate with African people in the Pacific and Africa itself, a large number in India, you number 1 billion people on this earth. And once 1 billion people come to power and begin to make their own shoes, make their own eyeglasses, produce their own food, you don't have to tell anybody they must he's spoken to, treated with respect. People are going to do that because the consequences of not doing it is going to be too severe. They're not going to want to pay the consequences. Being president of the United States is something we do or not do. But it's not the most important thing we need to think about. He wouldn't do what? No, I don't think a black president would mess up the country. I don't even think Jesse Jackson would mess up the country. I think Jesse Jackson would turn the focus of the country around and pay more attention to people who work for a living, other than millionaires who make millions cheating people. I think it would be a new country under Jesse Jackson. I think that's what they fear. But I don't think Jesse Jackson is the only qualified black man to run for president. I think there's some more qualified than Jesse who wouldn't walk across the street to become president. Because they know they know that presidents don't run this country. Big corporations, all those money behind it, all that telling them what to do. They just don't want to be a part of that kind of a network.
Okay, Vincent, and then Jeanette, and then...
What you think about reparations?
Reparations, we should demand it, and we should demand it on high reparations. Whether we get a nickel or not, we should keep the issue before the public.
That's right.
If other people got any form of reparations, the Jews did get some reparations from Germany, the Japanese did get some. Our labor have to build this country. Our labor have to make this country possible. We should keep that right out front.
That's right.
Whether we ever get a nickel, we should keep smearing our faces with it. Don't stop.
Dr. Clarke, I agree with you. That's what I said, the same philosophy. When we get one nickel, it's a matter of keeping it before the public. Absolutely.
No one asked me about the paper they're writing. Any difficulty you have. You're afraid I'm going to act like a college professor? Which I more than likely will.
Jeanette?
I want to know, who was it that inspired you, and what was it that they did to make you want to improve yourself?
Well, I wanted my life to say something to young men, young women of my class status and my ethnic background, that you don't have to have 30 degrees. From the lowly, from a farm in Alabama, from a shoe shine boy that I was, from a caddy that I was, from a floor scrubber that I was, and by studying and working and believing in myself, I can climb out. And if I can climb out, you can climb out too. Not only what my life needs to say to scholars, I've trained generations of them. What can my life say for you? I don't care how poor any of you were, I have been, I will be. I was poorer than anybody in here has ever been.
Jerry?
So, do you think that Congress does enough about drugs in our black communities?
I don't think Congress does enough, but I think Congress sit aside and let it get started. We are not ready to deal with the agreement that was made with the mafia during the Second World War to use drugs as a form of mind control in the black community. And there may have been a second agreement because our community began to be flooded with drugs again soon after the decline of the Civil Rights Movement. This time we'll conquer their minds. We can't conquer their bodies, we're going to conquer their minds. I think we can use those same minds to conquer the disease. Because if you love yourself, you don't put no poison in your veins. I was a sergeant in the army, and I used to tell men that you walk this way like a king. You're too proud to carry poison in your veins and to transfer that poison to your woman who's a queen. You're also too proud to let people beat up on you. So I told them, if you forgive the reference, when you go into town, if you don't have a switchblade and a prophylactic, you're naked in the street. You ain't got no clothes on at all.
Lawrence?
Mr. Clarke, I would like to know, what is your opinion of the Afro-American of today, and how could we get out of this oppression or
I think our best chance of getting out of the bind within is to what extent we make good connections with the African world outside of the United States and show the United States that your calling card to that world is how you treat me. Whether you get the minerals out of South Africa, it determines how you treat me. Whether you get the zinc and the manganese, the cobalt out of the Congo, is how you treat me. And we have to make the kind of contact with the African and send the kind of technicians to help the African that will make the African say to the whites, I don't need you, I got my brother over here. He'll help us lead with the mind. When both of us come together, if you know what's happening between Russia and the United States right now, what's with England, Russia, and the United States, you will understand what I'm talking about. Europeans get together to save Europeans as Europeans, irrespective of ideology. We should get together no matter who's a Muslim, who's a Baptist, and who's a Protestant, or who's a Jehovah's Witness. I don't know how you get together with a Jehovah's Witness. So, my main point, if a Jehovah's Witness, black, downtown, try to get a cab, and you, black, Muslim, downtown, trying to get a cab, and me, Baptist, black, trying to get a cab, one chance is no better than the other.
That's right. That's right.
You have to look at those black faces, he ain't gonna ask what religion you belong to. If the face is black, he said, I ain't gonna take you to Harlem. In fact, you don't even have to live in Harlem.
That's right. Listen.
Go ahead. Thank you.
One more question.
All right.
Teach, I'm gonna ask this. What you think we should teach what you think I should teach the children today? What do you think we teach them? Good matter.
Self-sustaining skills. This is the age of skills. People don't hire people who can do anything. People hire people who can do specific things. Everybody needs some kind of skill. So when they go to ask for a job, when the man says, what can you do? What have you done? They can say something that they have done well enough to identify.
Okay.
Even preschoolers, like pre-day nursery school?
Well, you start teaching them as early as you can, as early as you can get to it. Many times, if you see a child putting the wooden blocks together with some kind of accuracy, he might eventually be a good cabinet maker.
That's right.
Ain't nothing wrong with being a good cabinet maker. Have you hired any lately?
Very expensive.
These are highly paid people.
That's right.
These are highly paid people. Have you had a plumber lately? That get an orders with a key. Now please speak to you about the leak in my basement, sir.
Are there any other questions?
Yes. Recently we saw Spike Lee movie, and the topic is "Do the Right Thing." To me, it's like do the right thing for the present situation. What do you think about it?
I thought basically the movie was an improvement on School Days. That was a disaster.
Very much. Yes.
Because he brought up too many themes in School Days that he didn't resolve. He only resolved one theme, that was the seduction of a black girl. I think Do the Right Thing brought up a lot of themes unresolved also, but there was other opportunity for expansion, opportunity for explanation that he didn't get in. And I'm not talking about propaganda. A simple explanation that could be good. This person, you keep talking about you were a great civilization, this or that. What happened? 4 good lines put in the mouth of a character. Could have said, what happened? And this is what you were told to an Italian. You could say that one of your countrymen, Christopher Columbus, who opened up the New World for the exploitation of Europe, did not play a minor role. Leave it right there. Don't preach on it, drop it. Let the public think about it. But I think Spike Lee needs encouragement. We don't need to bang him and criticize him ever. I think we need to praise him too.
Yeah.
Because I see him as a developing screenmaker. Now he said next he want to make an autobiography for Malcolm X. I don't think he knows what he's getting into.
That's right.
Because when Hollywood bought the script years ago, they had an option on it, then released the option. A lot of the people in the life of Malcolm X are still alive. They're going to want a whole lot of money if you're going to portray them on film. And you cannot do anything on Malcolm with accuracy without showing competition. Now that's great talent. His sons are still alive, although they don't agree with each other. Malcolm X's brothers are still alive, although they didn't particularly agree with him in his lifetime. You have to show him interacting. His wife is still alive. And like most women, proper amount of ego. She wants her role prettied up.
In the play, Do the Right Thing, what do you think was the right thing?
The right thing was for the blacks to pull that money and buy the damn pizzeria. Don't burn it down, fill it up. You put in a damn picture there you want to after that. Put Paragon picture up there. Tell you, your pizzeria, your community. Do what you please. So doing the right thing wasn't just to put the place down. I said, okay. You've had your days here, you've made money. Let's make you an offer.
Making offer that they can't refuse, right?
Yep. Said, if you don't give it to us at this reasonable price, nobody's gonna come here to buy pizza anyway. So sooner or later we're gonna get it at a lower price. Because you're gonna lose money. We don't know a great deal about strategy, and we talk about strategy a lot, but we don't use it. Strategy is something you talk to 3 people about, and you distrust 2 of them. Which 2 to distrust? It's a big job finding out.
Any other questions?
Well, I've enjoyed this morning with you, and I'm not above coming again if you dare to extend an invitation. I thought you'd have some more questions about the thing you were doing personally, and where information can be found on what you are writing about, what you are involved in. But be that as it may, the questions have been interesting and they've been intelligently put. And I'm glad to have been here to answer it. And glad to spend this morning with you. Thank you again.
Okay, we're going to wrap up now. We're going to definitely invite Dr. Clarke back again. He didn't get to speak on the time he spent with Malcolm X or Martin Luther King or any of that stuff. So you definitely have to come back and share those experiences. Okay? What do you break? We're going to have a 15-minute break.
I want to see Angie, Tisha, and Veronica.